Could you explain to me, I've heard this term and I need it explained because it takes me a while to figure things out. DACA.
Yes.
Okay.
So that's an executive order.
From President Obama.
From President Obama. It stands for, the acronym stands for Deferred Action for Childhood Arrivals. And so it's for young people who are undocumented, who are in this country because they came here, you know, and there are different eligibility criteria that I can go through, but they're children that have been raised here.
They're taken here by the mom and dad when they were young.
Presumably they came with their parents, or maybe one parent, or maybe unaccompanied, but there are specific criteria to be able to apply. And so once you apply, if the application is accepted, it just protects you from, it stops deportation at the end of the day, right?
Okay.
And so for 2 years, you would kind of be exempt from deportation proceedings, even if you were already in deportation proceedings, and you get a work authorization. And so you're able to work, and you're protected from not being deported for 2 years. And at that point, you could apply for another 2 years. And so a lot of folks are a little confused, and they think it's a DREAM Act, and it's not the DREAM Act. The DREAM Act is, includes a pathway to citizenship. Very similar criteria. People agree that it's probably, young people who have been here for a set number of years, that have been in our education system, that they've graduated from our high schools.
People that grew up here.
Right.
And,
right.
or ostensibly Americans.
Absolutely.
Have come through our system.
Know nothing else in many cases, right?
Exactly.
I mean, we have what they call the 1.5, immigrant, which, they grew up here, but they were foreign born, right? And so as young people who have been not born and raised, I'm sorry, raised here, they don't know anything different. They really truly believe they're American, and oftentimes don't even know about their documentation status.
Until they go to...
Unfortunately, until they go to apply to college, or they're looking for work, or to get a license, right?
Yeah. Yeah, and it seems so unfair, to discriminate against a child who, feels like an American, acts like an American. A lot of times is, if you look at, who's joining our service these days, that volunteers to defend the country, to say, well, because of something that, you couldn't control as a child, you can't bear, recognize the fruits of, being an American. And I commend President Obama. I'm sure he needs my commendation, but for having the nerve to do that.
Right.
You know what I mean? Because I'm sure that, people get, really bent out of shape. And they look at this, as if, everybody, you should be deported who came here. And it makes no sense. It would never happen. And if it did happen, it would be a crushing blow to the economy. Because people who, in many cases, are doing the jobs that most Americans don't want to do.
Sure.
And the bottom would fall out, as it were.
And for Dreamers, the large majority of mainstream U.S. society actually supports the DREAM Act. They can connect to children who have been brought here, unwillingly, quote unquote, who have been raised here, who have, to some extent already achieved the American dream and are working towards upward mobility. People can really connect to that. So as far as that piece of legislation, when we think about comprehensive immigration reform, we do feel pretty secure that that's actually going to pass, because people can really connect to children, and children who've been raised here and who consider themselves and act like Americans. What's going to be difficult, and it's going to get a lot uglier before it gets better, is real comprehensive immigration reform. And so, I mean, it looks like we may be passing some legislation this year, which is great news.
At least there are some Republicans now who are willing to talk about it.
Right.
And who are willing to at least, put, common sense proposals on the table.
Sure.
A pathway, if they're not going to have a pathway to citizenship in any form, it's really, you're missing a boat, and it's not going to work.
Absolutely.
Because people aren't going to come forward.
Absolutely.
And it's hard enough to get people to come forward, because everybody's always so, if I come forward, does this affect, how I get benefits? Or, it's a tough situation, it really is. And I hope you're right. I hope something happens. It's so frustrating.
Something has to happen.
I keep saying that about everything, but nothing seems to happen.
Right. I mean, we have anywhere from 12 million to 30 million people, we don't know what the accurate figures are, living in the shadows.
Right.
being exploited by employers, by
Not paying taxes.
abusive partners,
Right.
Not paying taxes for, I mean, we do have a lot more folks than we think we do paying taxes.
Right.
There are reports that show that immigrants pay into, undocumented immigrants pay more into the tax base than they actually can reap the benefits from. But by the same token, I lost my train of thought.
That's right. But it's important that what people get caught up on is oh, we got to build this border fence,
Right.
and the border fence will fix everything, which is nonsense. I mean, people fly in, people come in from Canada, people come in
Outstay
on
their
visas,
visas.
overstay their
Absolutely.
visa. I do understand the need to have enforcement of your immigration laws. I mean, especially in this day and age of terrorism, there has to be a mechanism to do that. But while you're coming up with that mechanism, that doesn't mean you have to be cruel. That doesn't mean you have to
And that's exactly what's
deport mothers
happened.
from children.
Right. And we've criminalized and demonized in the media, in our society, people who are here who are unauthorized.
Yes.
Just even using the word alien.
Illegal,
and alien.
Yeah.
When you think of an alien, you think of someone who's foreign and ugly and undesirable and not someone you want in
Yes.
your living room. And so,
From another planet.
Right. And so we're talking about human beings. We're talking
Yes.
about people who left everything behind to be here. And that's a huge sacrifice.
Yes.
And people don't just come here because they want to check out the tree at Rockefeller Center. They want to come here. They want to work.
They
And
want to make a life.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. And so
You know
once
what?
we start to humanize the issue, I think that people will have a better understanding of what we're talking about.
And we have to be realistic too. I mean, and the realism is, there's a need for labor.
Absolutely.
And we have to decide how much labor we really need, and
Right.
then allow those folks in
Right.
legally, with work permits, and monitor how that goes. And of course, listen, if somebody comes here and they commit a crime, they should be deported. I mean, that's this isn't for lawbreakers, but 99.9% of the people who come here
Are not.
are not committing crimes.
Right.
And,
Absolutely
and they
not.
want to keep, because especially you want to keep your nose clean. You don't want to get in trouble because
Right.
you like it.
Absolutely.
And what folks don't understand is, if you're starving, and your country is in real bad shape, people are going to come, because you got no choice.
And there's a market.
Yeah, there's a market.
There's a market. People are coming because they can find jobs in farming as, day laborers. I mean, they're coming here because they know they can get work. And if they don't, they go back. I mean, what's actually happening now is that a lot of reverse migration. People are actually going back to their native countries because they can't survive here after the recession. And so so people are not going to come unless there is work for them. And that's exactly what they're doing. It's a market-driven migration process. And so once they're here, they're filling the jobs, like you said, that no one else wants, right? And so, we have to work with them. They're filling these jobs. They're part of our societies. They're contributing economically speaking, politically. Their children are active. They're in our school system. So it's our duty, to ensure that they're integrating, that they're learning. I mean, this is a nation of immigrants, right? And so, what we have is, usually what you hear is a lot of our, kind of third, fourth, fifth generation immigrants, having the most oppositional feelings toward, and there's a sense of competition.
Well, you know what it's always too? The last person on a lifeboat wants to
Right.
pull up the ladder.
Right.
Oh, that's full here.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. It's really sad.
It is sad.
Yeah.
And with the aging of of the American population, and so many people, the baby boomers are going to be all retiring, and there isn't a lot of the baby boomers didn't produce like their parents produced. When I was growing up, it was nothing to see 7, 8, 5, 6 kids in a family. That was pretty common. You don't see that today. You see people having 2, maybe
Right,
3.
right.
3 is a lot. Somebody has 4, they're like, oh my God, they're having a 4th kid.
Right.
When I was a kid, that was nothing. There was just
Right,
like, it was
right.
another year she had a kid.
Their family changed.
And so, but my point is, you have to have a group coming behind, and to take care of that older population, and to fill up those voids in the workforce.
Absolutely.
And doing those jobs that listen, I'm an elevator mechanic. I didn't finish college. I don't want my kids to be elevator mechanics.
Right.
You know what I mean? I want my kids to go to college and move on. And not that there's anything about being an elevator mechanic. I'm actually proud of it. But you want your kid to do better than you did.
Right.
And so every social strata does that. And I'm sure like I was talking about before with the bus boys becoming waiters and then becoming managers. It's the norm in America. That's the beauty of America. That's why people come here. That's what it's all about. Because you can work hard and you can move up.
Right.
And
upward mobility.
What really bothers me when people say, "Oh, they came here to get welfare. They came here to get."
They're not eligible.
They're not eligible. It's
right.
nonsense. It's just stuff that's been fed by right-wing people, and it's
right.
just not true.
Well, the media does a pretty good job.
They don't question it. People
right.
say things
right.
on TV that I know
right.
are false, and nobody
right.
questions it.
Right.
And the media is, a lot of fault for what's going on in this country because they're so busy with on one hand and on the other hand,
right.
they don't bother to look at the facts.
Right.
And nobody wants to call anybody a liar, but sometimes people are lying, and you got to say, "Hey, you're lying."
Right. And there's a lot of studies out there that show again, how much we contribute, to the fabric of the United States economically, politically, socially, culturally.
To Social Security. I mean,
absolutely.
There's a lot of data that the illegal immigrants the undocumented folks who are paying into Social Security and never reaping the benefits of it. That
right.
money stays in the system.
Right.
And, it accrues to the rest of us.
At the end of the day, it really doesn't make sense. Our system, our immigration system is broken. I mean, our departments, contradict one another. So, DHS, Department of Homeland Security, and other departments will say, well, you're not even supposed to be here, so you're not supposed to be working.
Right.
It's illegal for you to be working and for someone to hire you. And yet, you can pay taxes,
right.
the IRS, so you can file income tax, and you're protected by Department of Labor and labor rights. I mean, so it really doesn't make sense. You're either supposed to be here, you're not, right? And so, of course, we want people to be protected, and we want them to pay into the tax base, but then we have to fix our system. And we don't have enough visas for the jobs that we need to fill in this country, so that's another issue. I mean, we have a lot more visas for higher skilled, jobs than we do for the low skilled labor that we're talking about. Mm-hmm. And so until we fix that, I mean, that's just one of many issues that are wrong.
Until we admit that that's the way things are happening in actuality.
Right.
And deal with what's actually happening.
People don't look at the numbers,
yes.
like you were saying. They don't look at the facts, unfortunately.
Right. They need to deal with what's actually happening and not what they would like to envision the world being.
Right.
And and until they do that, we won't have a rational immigration policy. But on the other side of the coin is we have to be able to, I don't want to say police our boys, but know who's here, why they're here, how long they're supposed to be here, what they're supposed to be doing. That's every country does that.
Sure.
And we don't do a good job of that.
Right.
But there, the simplistic response is, oh, we'll build a 50-foot fence. So that's not high enough. We'll build a 100-foot fence.
Well, there aren't many incentives for people to come forward, right? I
yes.
mean, we make it pretty scary for people to come yes. forward, right? And so even with just employing people, I mean, if we're looking at having to prove continued presence, if there is some reform that includes a pathway, hopefully a pathway to citizenship, what employers are really going to step forward and say,
yeah, I haven't been paying taxes on this guy for 20 years.
Yeah. I've been, employing someone who's quote unquote undocumented illegal. How do we protect those employers as well so that people can come out of the shadows and so we can have some kind of proof that they have been here in this country and they've been working and they are of good moral character. I mean, these are the things that it's going to come down to this, and we have to gear up.
I have to wrap up. This has been a fascinating conversation, and thank you for all you do for the community. And I just want to end by saying we have a bunch of very nice young men. You'll see their names rolling at the end. They volunteer here constantly. They keep this station going, and but it's very man-centric. So if there's any ladies out there, these guys could use some dates on a Friday night.
On
I tape here on a Friday
Women's
night.
Day.
A Woman's Day, they're a bunch of good-looking young men. So feel free to come down on Friday night to volunteer in LMC TV, and you'll see the names as we roll, ladies. This is your chance. Thank you, and have a good night.